What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another WrestleRant review here on the channel. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Today we're talking the WrestleMania IX Becoming a Spectacle documentary. I know we're a couple weeks late here. This actually came out 3 weeks ago. I didn't have a chance to start it until closer to WrestleMania and then finish it not until last week, because I was at WrestleMania this year in Vegas, which is what this documentary was all about. WrestleMania IX, their first time in Vegas, their last time in Vegas for WrestleMania. And I really didn't have a whole lot of, expectations or hopes for this documentary, with WrestleMania 9 being considered widely by fans to be among, if not the worst WrestleMania of all time. You look at the card and they go through the card on the show. They don't really discuss why it's a bad show or why it's a great show, because it's not a great show. They don't justify it being a great show by any means on this review, or on this documentary, rather. But they go through the behind the scenes of kind of how this WrestleMania led them to where they are today, with WrestleMania 41 being in Vegas just a couple of weeks ago. Now, obviously, if WrestleMania 9 never happens, WrestleMania 41 happens all the same. In Vegas, most likely. I mean, Mania 9, they were 9 years in. Mania was already established at that point. The product was in the shitter. That's why the Mania itself is just not good. But I thought the behind the scenes stuff on this documentary was really what made it. Because again, when I first saw that they were releasing this, I'm thinking that's cool, because they really do not do any Peacock originals anymore, WWE Network originals, as we used to call them. They just don't have the incentive anymore, because they already have the subscribers. Peacock already has a whole bunch of subscribers. They're not going to get a whole bunch more from a fucking Mania 9 documentary. They kind of focus their efforts now on their YouTube channels, on Netflix and stuff like that. So they don't really do stuff like this anymore, but I'm glad they did, because they had a whole lot of unused footage that has never been seen before, has never seen the light of day until it was incorporated into this documentary of behind the scenes stuff at WrestleMania 9. So I thought it was really cool. It's probably much cooler for people that grew up in that era of 1993, that era of WWE, Bret Hart being on the show, Hulk Hogan's return, to the kind of get into the behind the scenes of that. I wanted more talk of what happened at the end of the show with Hogan coming out and winning the WWE Championship the way that he did. They did acknowledge that people were upset, specifically people behind the scenes, Bret Hart himself they got for this thing, Hogan they talked to for this documentary, among other people. Obviously not Vince. Vince is persona non grata now, but they show a lot of footage of him and him being at the show, and they talk about Vince. They just don't interview him for obvious reasons. Um, so I was kind of like worried when I saw this was almost 2 hours long. I'm thinking, why does a fucking documentary on Mania 9 need to be almost 2 hours in length? But it ended up being great stuff with some great exclusive interviews. They got a lot of talking heads, people that still work there, legends that were on the show, Lex Luger being among them, people on the archival footage team for WWE that still work there. This was really, really cool. So anyway, here, I didn't like write down a complete play-by-play of the documentary. I just kind of wrote down some notes and some thoughts on what they featured. But they mentioned that the footage that you see in this documentary, they filmed everything that they did because they wanted to document it internally. Now, why they did not air this before now, I have no idea. The show celebrated 30 years 2 years ago. They've been in Vegas for other shows, not Mania, but it's not like, oh, we're going to save this footage for the next time Mania goes to Vegas. I mean, maybe, but I thought it was cool they put it up nonetheless, because they do a lot of this sort of stuff, like I said, on their YouTube channel now, specifically the WWE Vault channel. I'm not subscribed to the channel, but I've seen a lot of videos pop up in my recommended of, behind the scenes, the day of type stuff from shows many years ago. But anyway, they talked about how Caesar's Palace, the parking lot of which was used for this WrestleMania, was typically used for boxing events. Hulk Hogan says that Vince no longer believed in him as an attraction going into Mania 9. This was Hogan's ninth WrestleMania. Not his ninth main event. He was not involved in the main event of WrestleMania, what was it, 4? When Savage won the championship, the vacant WWE title from Ted DiBiase. Although Hogan came out afterward, I believe, so he really was involved in every Mania main event up until Mania 10 when he wasn't with the company anymore. Mania 8, they mentioned in the Hoosier Dome, lacked pizzazz, they said. So they made tickets more affordable for Mania 9. And like the most expensive ticket was like maybe $200-$300 for like ringside. And the least expensive ticket was like $25 just to get people in the door. That was just a wild thing to even admit to. I know it was 1993, but like you can go to wrestling shows today for that type of money, honestly. I know it's not WrestleMania, but like literally the cheapest ticket at Mania this year, going into the show, maybe up until Showtime itself, was like $300, if not more than that. So it's just crazy to think how much has changed since then. But even since the last time I paid for a ticket to go to WrestleMania, now I go with media and stuff. But previously I would buy a ticket to go to Mania. Even then it was like $150 a ticket to even get in the door. Way less expensive than it is today. But anyway, they did the show in the parking lot, like I said. They talk about Lex Luger's role in the show, how he debuted at the Rumble. He was supposed to be named Narcissus. That was like the nickname they gave him anyway, but they ended up going with Lex Luger, thankfully, as his actual name. His real name, I believe. Maybe not. Maybe that's not his real name, but he used that in WCW. But anyway, they also talk about Giant Gonzalez debuting in the Rumble and that setting up the Mania match with Taker, the infamous match with Taker on that show, which was fucking awful. They mentioned Yokozuna winning the Rumble to face Bret Hart. That was the first Rumble that earned you an opportunity to challenge for the championship at Mania in the main event. They showed footage from a press conference they did announcing the show and the big matches for Mania right before WrestleMania, which was pretty cool. Hulk Hogan was not there. He was not present. But I think he was still scheduled to be at Mania itself because he wasn't involved in the product prior to that point. He went away. He was away for a while. After Mania 8, where he beat Sid Justice by DQ, I don't know if he was around right after that, but I know he wasn't at SummerSlam in 92. And that might have been his return for the first time in nearly a year when he came in for around Mania time. He wasn't at the Rumble either, I don't think. And he also was not at the press conference. That did not work for him, brother. But anyway, Pritchard shows up with a book of cards. He shows a book of cards here as far as like the book where they had the book of the booking book, essentially is what it was. Of all the cards they were doing for each show, they would map out shit in advance. I thought that was really cool. They held on to that and showed it off here for the documentary. Brutus Beefcake came back around this time with a face mask that was stemming from the incident on the water polo incident, whatever the fuck it was. They talked about it in Dark Side of the Ring last year. I get it mixed up with the jet ski incident that Hogan was supposedly involved in. They talk about on this doc a little bit later on. Hogan did not change upon returning. He was the exact same persona that he was before he left, and people kind of, resonated that. They are kind of, didn't really like the fact that he was essentially the same Hogan that he was before he left. Hart was told that Hogan was only back to promote a movie, and that was the only reason why he was involved in WrestleMania. Bret Hart was the champion going into WrestleMania, so he wanted Hogan nowhere near the main event scene. He should have only been back to put other people over, which he did not do. Even in the match that he ended up having on the show, beyond the main event, the tag title match, he did not put anyone over in that match either. They lost by DQ. Did him and Beefcake against Money Inc. So he didn't even put anyone over in that match either. It's not like he lost earlier in the show by pinfall, put someone over, and then wrestled in the main event. He fucking got DQ'd in that match, which was garbage. But he also was told, Bret Hart was that Hogan would not be involved in the world title scene. It would be Hart and Yokozuna one-on-one for the championship. Hogan says here that he felt like the feud needed hot sauce. That's what he said. The feud needed hot sauce and needed an extra pizzazz, a little more spark between Hart and Yokozuna. That's really just his translation of saying it needed more Hogan because I wanted to be involved in the world championship scene. Not to say that Hart and Yokozuna was this great world title feud by any means, but to have Hogan think that he needed to be involved was just bullshit. They talk about how they ran into production issues while building the set, which I thought the footage of all that sort of stuff was really cool. They ran the risk with the weather because it was an open parking lot, obviously. Thankfully, they lucked out in that sense. WrestleMania, they talk about the brand starting to grow and becoming what it was by Mania 9. They had fake odds available at Caesar's Palace that a lot of people thought were real to the point where they had to take it down because people thought they could bet on the matches. I think Howard Finkel even said something about that, which was kind of fucking bizarre because if he thought it was real, he works there. He might be privy to the finishes. That's got to be illegal, but they weren't real odds, so it didn't matter, and they ended up taking them down so they didn't deceive people. And they also talk about the wrestlers being around ringside, being skeptical of all the cameras, specifically Undertaker, who, especially at that point, so early on in his run as Taker, as the dead man, was so protective of his persona. And he didn't want people filming him, not knowing what that footage was for or what it was, intended for and where it was going, who was going to see it. And he was very apprehensive about being filmed with the character, which was funny. So anyway, they talk about working with animals on the show, like the camels and stuff that they used for the entrances, including Taker, the bird that was a part of his entrance. He was really hoping it wouldn't shit on him during the entrance, which thankfully it did not. They talk about how Hogan had a black eye and how Savage was rumored to have punched him. I don't know if Savage admitted to that, but like a lot of people don't believe it because like Savage came out after Hogan won the championship on this show. So if he hated him so much, why would he even want to be involved in Hogan's post-match celebration? That wasn't even necessary. Savage did not wrestle on this show. But Hogan has always claimed he was hit by a jet ski. I think Bischoff has always backed up that theory as well. Hogan does admit to lying about, the physical, as far as like he was checked out for a physical going into the show, because if he admitted that he had a broken orbital socket, they would not have cleared him. But he told the doctor, "Oh, it's all for the show, brother," and they fucking believed him. What a dumb doctor. Where do they get these people? But they ended up clearing him. So had he told the truth, he would not have wrestled on the show, and especially not won the championship. But he felt like the show needed him. He needed to make the town, brother. Just ridiculous shit. Because he knew he wouldn't have passed otherwise. So they kind of go through the card at this point. The Godfather wrestled on the show as Papa Shango. He was very happy to have wrestled in his hometown because he's from Las Vegas. Jim Ross, who was actually interviewed for this thing. I don't know if this was footage from many years ago or if they were. I saw no one talking about this, but the fact they got Jim Ross for this, because this was his debut. This was his WWE debut at Mania 9 on commentary. And they got him to talk about his involvement with the show. And he's obviously in AEW now, so I don't know if they got him with permission from AEW or if this was filmed before he went to AEW, but that would have been like 6, 7, 8 years ago. So I don't know, but I thought that was really cool that Jim Ross was a part of this. Sam Roberts is one of the talking heads on this documentary, offering like the fan perspective. And he has a lot of positive things to say about the Doink and Crush match and the finish. I don't really see the brilliance personally, but he thought it was one of the best finishes of all time. Okay. Money Inc. and Storyline were actually the ones credited with injuring Hogan because they faced Hogan and Beefcake in that tag title match on the show. They ended up winning by DQ. Hogan and Beefcake initially won because they had Jimmy Hart act as the ref and make the 3 count, but he wasn't a real ref, so they got DQ'd instead. It was a terrible fucking finish. Lex Luger talks about facing Mr. Perfect in their match on the show. Undertaker ends up beating Gonzalez by DQ, another DQ finish on the show. They probably had a count-out finish on the show as well. That's how bad this show is. Bret Hart says, and again, they don't spend a whole lot of time on this, but he does say that he was told by Vince that he would be champ long-term. And he had never felt, up until this point, I'm sure, because the Montreal Screwjob has to trump it, he said he was never more felt betrayed by Vince until that day. Obviously after the fact, but especially up until that point, he felt betrayed. Because Vince told him he'd be champion long-term. Plans change, pal. Last minute change. We want Hogan in the main event, taking that belt from Yokozuna, who you just lost the championship to, which did no favors for Yokozuna, but we can't hear his perspective on it because he died 5 years ago. So anyway, Savage was apparently mad at Hogan for winning the belt, and Hogan was the one that said that. Hogan talked about the backlash from people in the back over him winning the championship, and Savage was pissed about it. And there was a lot of like back and forth as far as what Vince told Hogan, and Hogan, it was the deal that he agreed to, but it wasn't his fault, and Bret Hart heard what he wanted to hear. A lot of finger pointing, but I believe Bret. Over Hogan and Vince, I would believe Bret Hart. Obviously, you can't get Vince's side of it because he's, MIA right now, and you'll probably never get his side of it, but this whole thing was just ridiculous. And Undertaker blamed politics. He's never liked Hogan dating back to their initial feud over 30 years ago, so he'll obviously blame Hogan for that too, as he should. And Hart says that he was told about the finish to the main event being changed the Friday before, and Mania was on Sunday, which is crazy. So he was told at not the literal last minute, but like only a few days before, and he was not happy. And Vince told him it was just a change in direction. That's what he said. Hogan ended up winning the championship on the show, only to lose it literally 2 or 3 months later back to Yokozuna at King of the Ring. Literally the only reason why they did it was just to give a big moment on the show and to pop people. And a lot of the people, they were probably casual fans. So that might have been why they did it, but it's still a shitty finish in retrospect. And it's not like Hogan dropped the belt to Bret Hart, which he should have. He didn't want to. And Bret's always said that Hogan didn't want to, but Hogan has said otherwise. It's just a lot of back and forth bullshit. But he really should have. Honestly, if Hogan was going to win the championship in the way that he did in that shitty-ass finish, I know he lost the belt to Yokozuna, who then held the belt until Mania the following year, who lost it to Bret. But they never got a chance to do Bret and Hogan again after that, or if at all. They really should have done it at SummerSlam. He should have stuck around until that point, or even at King of the Ring to lose it to Bret, not Yokozuna. And then maybe Yokozuna can beat Bret again. I don't know. But they really should have done Hogan and Bret, and they just didn't. And Hogan left for WCW after that. Hogan said he wanted to do something different. That's why he wanted to come back and win the belt. It was something different. Like, don't give me that fucking nonsense. And this I did not know. I had seen other people say this, but I kind of forgot about it. Nick Khan worked that show, not as part of the company, but he was actually like a handler or like a, what do you call it? Someone who kind of, shows people to their seats type thing. He was actually a part of that Vegas Mania even then. Now, obviously, he's responsible for bringing WrestleMania now in WWE to Las Vegas in 2025, but I thought they even showed a picture of him like in the background of a shot, and it was pretty incredible. And they, again reiterate there'd be no WrestleMania 41 without WrestleMania 9, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I see their point. Overall, though, I just kind of hit upon the major parts, but I thought this was a really, really good documentary. So even for someone like me that did not grow up on WrestleMania 9, has only seen it once because the show is terrible, I reviewed it here on the channel many years ago. But even for someone like me, I thought all the footage stuff was really, really cool. And it's well worth checking out for that alone. So WrestleMania 9 becoming a spectacle. Check it out right now on Peacock. I know this is a couple weeks old, but bear with me as I get through all my reviews of this and Dark Side of the Ring and all the other stuff we've been backed up here on the channel with since I was in Vegas for Mania Week, and that kind of fucked up my schedule. But anyway, 2 thumbs up for WrestleMania 9 becoming a spectacle. I wish they would do more Peacock exclusives for WWE. They just don't see the point anymore, but when they pop up with something like this at the last minute, kind of out of nowhere, I'm all for it, and I'll eat it up and review it here for the channel for you guys to check out. So, again, thank you for checking out my review. I appreciate it. For more reviews of original specials and WrestleRant reviews in general, check out the description box for more playlist options on that front. Be sure to like the video on your way out and subscribe. Hit that bell button to be notified every single time we upload new content and every single time I'm live here on the channel. Have an awesome one, folks. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.